The sun was shining brightly over the sprawling fields of the Harmony Music Festival. Thousands of people had gathered to enjoy a day filled with music, laughter, and good vibes. The air buzzed with excitement as festival-goers danced near the main stage, lined up at food trucks, or wandered through colorful art installations. It was one of those days where everything seemed perfect, until chaos erupted. Lila Harper, a 24-year-old with a warm smile and a guitar strapped to her back, moved through the crowd like she owned it. She wasn't here just for fun. Lila worked part-time as a volunteer at events like this. It helped her save money for her big dream, to record her own album someday. Music was her life, but paying the bills came first. So between setting up tents and guiding lost attendees to their destinations, she kept an eye out for anyone who might need help. That's when she heard it, a small, shaky voice cutting through the noise. At first, it was easy to miss amidst the pounding music and chatter, but then it grew louder. A little boy, no older than 6, stood alone near the edge of the crowd, tears streaming down his face. His hands clutched tightly to a stuffed dinosaur toy, and his wide eyes darted around frantically, searching for someone familiar in the sea of strangers. Lila's heart sank. Without hesitation, she made her way toward him, weaving past groups of people until she reached the boy. Kneeling down so they were at eye level, she gave him a soft smile. "Hey there," she said gently, keeping her voice calm despite the chaos around them. "What's your name?" The boy sniffled, trying to wipe his tears with the sleeve of his shirt. Ethan," he managed to say between sobs. "Well, Ethan, I'm Lila." She pointed to herself before leaning slightly closer. "Do you know where your mom or dad is? Are you lost?" Ethan nodded quickly, fresh tears spilling over. "I can't find them," he wailed, clutching his dinosaur even tighter. "We were looking at the balloons and now I don't see them." Lila placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, okay? We'll find them together. You're safe with me." Her words seemed to calm him a bit. He took a deep breath, though his little body still trembled. Lila could tell he was scared, not just because he was separated from his family, but also because the festival grounds were overwhelming for someone so young. There were loud noises everywhere, flashing lights and endless streams of unfamiliar faces. "All right, buddy," Lila said, standing up and holding out her hand. "Let's go find your parents. Do you remember what they looked like? Or maybe what they were wearing?" Ethan thought for a moment, his brow furrowing in concentration. "They had green hats," he finally said, brightening a little. "Matching ones." "That's great," Lila exclaimed, giving his hand a squeeze. "Green hats are pretty special. Let's see if we can spot them." With that, the unlikely pair began navigating the crowded festival grounds. Lila stayed patient, letting Ethan take the lead whenever he recognized something: a balloon stand, a food truck, or a giant inflatable dinosaur that made him giggle despite his fear. As they walked, she asked him questions to keep his mind off being scared. "Do you like dinosaurs?" she asked, pointing to his toy. "Yes," Ethan replied eagerly, his earlier shyness fading. "This is Rex. He's my favorite." "Rex? Huh? That's a cool name. What else do you like?" "I play soccer," Ethan said proudly. "And I have a pool at home." "A pool, wow," Lila teased lightly. "You must be living the good life." Ethan grinned, nodding vigorously. For a moment, he almost forgot why he was upset. But then reality hit again, and his smile faltered. "Do you think we'll find them soon?" "We will," Lila promised, firmly. "We just have to keep looking." She flagged down a security guard, describing Ethan and asking if anyone had reported a missing child. The guard shook his head, but assured her they'd keep an eye out. Lila thanked him and continued searching, stopping occasionally to ask other volunteers and staff members if they'd seen a couple wearing green hats. As time passed, the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the festival. Lila could feel exhaustion creeping in, but she refused to give up. Every now and then she glanced down at Ethan, whose grip on her hand hadn't loosened once. She couldn't imagine how terrified he must feel, surrounded by strangers in such a chaotic environment. Her determination only grew stronger. Finally, After nearly an hour of searching, Lila spotted movement in the distance. A woman sprinted toward them, waving a green hat high above her head. Her face was streaked with tears, and her voice carried desperation as she called out, "Ethan! Ethan! Where are you?" Ethan froze for a split second before breaking into a run. "Mommy!" he shouted, his tiny legs carrying him faster than Lila would have thought possible. The reunion was nothing short of emotional. The woman dropped to her knees, pulling Ethan into a tight embrace. Her relief was palpable, and she rocked him back and forth, murmuring words of love and reassurance. Lila watched silently, feeling a lump form in her throat. She knew exactly how much that moment meant to both of them. When the woman finally looked up, her eyes locked onto Lila's. "Thank you," she whispered hoarsely, her voice trembling. "You have no idea." Lila shook her head, offering a small smile. "It's okay. I'm just glad he's safe." The woman introduced herself as Victoria and insisted on finding some way to repay Lila for her kindness. Lila politely declined, saying it was simply the right thing to do. But Victoria wouldn't take no for an answer. She pulled out her phone and asked for Lila's number, explaining that she wanted to send something as a token of gratitude. Reluctantly, Lila agreed, though she didn't think much of it. After all, she'd done what anyone would have done in her position. Helping Ethan had been instinctive, a natural response to seeing someone in need. Little did she know, this simple act of kindness was about to change her life in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. After the whirlwind of emotions at the festival, Lila returned to her normal life, or at least tried to. The next morning, she woke up to the familiar hum of her small apartment. Sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, and the faint smell of coffee lingered in the air as she got ready for another long day of work. Life hadn't changed overnight because of what happened at the festival, but something about the experience stayed with her. She couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, the way his little hands had clung to hers, how his face lit up when he talked, about dinosaurs and soccer, and the sheer relief in his voice when he finally saw his mom. It wasn't just the boy who stuck in her mind. It was also Victoria, the frantic mother whose gratitude felt so genuine. Lila had been raised to believe that helping others was simply the right thing to do, but this time, something felt different. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but she knew the encounter meant more than she initially thought. Her routine didn't leave much room for reflection, though. By mid-morning, she was already behind the counter at the cafe where she worked part-time. The cafe was always busy, filled with customers ordering lattes, muffins, and sandwiches while chatting about their plans for the weekend. Lila moved, quickly, taking orders, pouring drinks, and cleaning tables. Her feet ached by noon, but she didn't complain. Every tip she earned went straight into her savings jar, the one labeled Music Dream Fund. As the afternoon dragged on, Lila found herself glancing at the clock more often than usual. Her mind kept drifting back to the festival, wondering if Ethan was okay now, if he'd told his parents all about Rex the dinosaur, and if Victoria ever thought about the stranger who helped her son. She shook her head, trying to focus on the task at hand. After all, there was no reason for her to dwell on it. People helped each other every day, and most of the time, they never crossed paths again. That's just how life worked. But fate had other plans. Later that evening, after closing up the cafe and heading home, Lila noticed an envelope tucked under her door. She picked it up curiously, turning it over in her hands. The handwriting on the front was elegant, neat loops and curves that seemed almost too polished for someone like her. Her name was written clearly across the center, Lila Harper. There was no return address, which made her hesitate for a moment. Who would send her a letter? And why? Curiosity got the better way, and she carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper folded neatly in half. As she unfolded it, she recognized the handwriting immediately. It belonged to Victoria, Ethan's mom. The note was short but heartfelt. Dear Lila, I can't thank you enough for everything you did for Ethan and me at the festival. Your kindness made all the difference during a terrifying moment. Please accept my deepest gratitude. I'd love to invite you to dinner at our home next Saturday evening. It would mean so much to us to express our thanks in person. Hope to see you there. Warm regards, Victoria. Lila read the note twice, her heart racing. Dinner at their home? She hadn't expected anything like this. Sure, Victoria had mentioned wanting to show her appreciation, but Lila assumed it would be something small, a gift card or maybe a bouquet of flowers. This invitation felt grand. Too grand. She sat down on the edge of her couch, staring at the note as conflicting thoughts swirled in her mind. On one hand, she felt honored. Victoria clearly valued what Lila had done and wanted to repay her kindness in a meaningful way. On the other hand, Lila couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She didn't know these people beyond the brief interaction at the festival. What if accepting the invitation came off as awkward or presumptuous? Plus, she wasn't exactly used to fancy dinners or meeting wealthy families. Her idea of a nice meal usually involved takeout pizza and a movie on the couch. Still, something about the note struck a chord deep within her. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was the sincerity behind them. Victoria hadn't needed to reach out again, yet here she was, going out of her way to include Lila in her world. Maybe it was a chance to step outside her comfort zone, to embrace an opportunity that might not come around again. For the rest, the day of the dinner arrived faster than Lila expected. She spent most of the morning pacing around her apartment, trying to decide what to wear. Nothing in her closet seemed right for an evening at a wealthy family's home. Her usual jeans and t-shirts were far too casual, and the one dress she owned, a simple black number she'd bought for a cousin's wedding years ago, felt outdated. Still, it was the best option she had. As she stood in front of the mirror, smoothing out imaginary wrinkles, Lila couldn't help but laugh at herself. Here she was, stressing over clothes when just weeks ago she'd been perfectly content wearing whatever got her through the day. But this wasn't just any dinner. It was an invitation into a world she knew nothing about. A world where people probably didn't think twice about spending money on things she could only dream of affording. By late afternoon, Lila forced herself to stop overthinking and focus on getting ready. She styled her hair neatly, applied a touch of makeup, and slipped into her dress. When she finally stepped back to look at her reflection, she felt a flicker of confidence. Maybe she didn't belong in this world, but that didn't mean she couldn't hold her own for one night. The drive to the Langston estate took longer than she anticipated. The address Victoria had given her led her out of the city and into an area she'd never visited before. As she turned onto a winding road lined with tall trees, Lila began to feel both excited and nervous. The further she drove, the more the scenery changed, from bustling streets to quiet countryside, dotted with sprawling properties hidden behind iron gates. When she finally reached the house, her jaw dropped. It wasn't just a house, it was a mansion. The building loomed ahead, its grand architecture illuminated by soft outdoor lights. A fountain bubbled gently in the circular driveway, and luxury cars were parked neatly along the sides. Lila pulled up slowly, feeling completely out of place in her old sedan. She hesitated for a moment, gripping the steering wheel tightly, before reminding herself why she was here. This wasn't about impressing anyone. It was about gratitude for Victoria, for Ethan, and for the kindness they'd shown her. Taking a deep breath, Lila stepped out of the car. Before she could even ring the doorbell, the massive front door swung open, revealing Victoria standing there with a warm smile. She looked as polished as ever, dressed in an elegant gown that made Lila suddenly hyper-aware of her own outfit. But instead of judgment, Victoria greeted her with open arms. "Lila, you made it," she said, her voice full of genuine excitement. Come in, come in." Lila followed her inside, her eyes widening as she took in the opulence of the space. The foyer alone was breathtaking, with high ceilings, a crystal chandelier, and marble floors that gleamed under the light. Artwork adorned the walls, and fresh flowers sat in vases on nearly every surface. It was like stepping into a magazine spread, except this was real life. "You have a beautiful home," Lila managed to say, though the words felt inadequate. Victoria laughed lightly, waving off the compliment. "Thank you, but it's just a house. What matters is who's inside it, don't you think? Her comment put Lila at ease, and she nodded in agreement. As they walked through the halls, Victoria introduced her to a few other guests mingling in the living room. There were couples chatting near the fireplace, some sipping wine while others admired the artwork. Everyone seemed so effortlessly sophisticated, and Lila struggled not to feel self-conscious. Yet, despite the obvious differences in their lifestyles, no one treated her differently. Each person greeted her warmly, making small talk and asking about her interests. Eventually, Victoria led her to the dining room, where a long table had been set with fine china, sparkling glasses, and candles casting a golden glow. At the head of the table sat a man Lila assumed was Victoria's husband. He stood up as they approached, extending his hand with a friendly smile. "You must be Lila," he said, his voice calm and inviting. "I've heard so much about you." Lila shook his hand, surprised by how down-to-earth he seemed despite his reputation as a billionaire tech mogul. His demeanor was kind, almost fatherly, and he immediately put her at ease. Over the course of the meal, he asked thoughtful questions about her music and shared stories about his own journey to success. It was clear he wanted to connect, not intimidate. Throughout the evening, Lila found herself relaxing more than she thought possible. The food was incredible, dishes she'd only seen on cooking shows, but what truly stood out was the conversation. Victoria and her husband spoke passionately about their work, their family, and their desire to give back to the community. They weren't showing off their wealth. They were sharing their lives. At one point, Victoria brought up Ethan, who had joined them briefly before being whisked away by a babysitter. "He hasn't stopped talking about you," she told Lila with a grin. "He keeps saying, 'That's the lady who saved me.'" Lila chuckled, feeling a swell of affection for the little boy. "Well, he's pretty unforgettable too," she replied. "He's got such a big heart." The sincerity in Victoria's eyes told Lila that her words meant a lot. For the first time that night, she realized this wasn't just about thanking her for helping Ethan. It was about forming a connection, a bond built on mutual respect and appreciation. As dessert was served, Victoria leaned closer to Lila, her expression turning serious yet hopeful. "There's something I want to discuss with you," she began. "Something we think might interest you." Lila tilted her head, curiosity piqued. "Oh? What is it?" Victoria exchanged a glance with her husband before continuing. "We own a recording studio, one of the best in the country, and after hearing about your passion for music, we'd love to offer you the chance to record your songs there, free of charge." For a moment, Lila was speechless. Her mind raced, trying to process what she'd just heard. A professional studio? For her? It sounded too good to be true. I don't know what to say," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to decide right now," Victoria assured her. "But we believe in your talent, Lila. We want to help you share it with the world." Tears welled up in Lila's eyes, though she blinked them away quickly. She hadn't expected anything like this, not in a million years. All she'd done was help a lost child, and now these strangers were offering her a life-changing opportunity. Gratitude overwhelmed her, and all she could do was nod and whisper, "Thank you." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter, heartfelt conversations, and newfound friendships. By the time Lila left the mansion, the sky was dark and stars twinkled overhead. She climbed into her car, still processing everything that had happened. This wasn't just a random act of kindness. It was the start of something bigger, something she couldn't wait to embrace. The days following the dinner at the Langston estate felt surreal for Lila. She replayed every moment in her mind, the grandeur of the house, the warmth of Victoria and her husband, and the overwhelming offer to use their recording studio. It was hard not to feel like she'd stepped into a dream. But as much as she wanted to dive headfirst into this opportunity, doubts began creeping in. She sat on her couch one evening, staring at the notebook filled with lyrics she'd written over the years. Some were scribbled hastily during late-night shifts at the cafe, while others had been carefully crafted during quiet moments alone. Each song told a piece of her story, her struggles, her hopes, her dreams. Music had always been her escape, her way of making sense of the world. Now suddenly it felt like someone was handing her the keys to unlock a door she'd only ever peeked through. But what if she wasn't ready? What if she messed it up? Lila sighed, leaning back against the cushions. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling her out of her thoughts. It was a text from Victoria, checking in to see how she was doing. The message was simple, yet it carried so much weight. Just wanted to remind you that we're here to support you every step of the way. That small act of kindness hit Lila harder than she expected. Here was this woman, a complete stranger, just weeks ago, who not only believed in her talent but genuinely cared about her journey. It made her realize something important. She didn't have to do this alone. For once, she could lean on someone else without feeling like a burden. With renewed determination, Lila decided to take the leap. Over the next few weeks, she threw herself into preparing for her time in the studio. She spent hours refining her songs, practicing guitar chords until her fingers ached, and rehearsing melodies until they flowed effortlessly. Nights blurred into mornings as she worked tirelessly, fueled by excitement and nerves. When the day finally came to visit the studio, Lila woke up early, her stomach buzzing with anticipation. She double-checked her bag, ensuring she had everything she needed: her guitar, her notebook, and a playlist of inspiration to keep her motivated. As she drove to the address Victoria had given her, her hands gripped the steering wheel tightly. This was it, the moment she'd been working toward her entire life. The studio was located in a sleek building downtown, its glass facade reflecting the morning sunlight. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. People bustled around, carrying equipment and discussing projects. Lila felt a mix of awe and intimidation as she walked in, clutching her guitar case like a lifeline. A young man greeted her warmly, introducing himself as Alex, the sound engineer assigned to work with her. "You must be Lila," he said with a friendly smile. "Victoria told us all about you. We're excited to get started." His words eased some of her tension and she nodded gratefully. "Thanks, I'm excited too, and maybe a little nervous." Alex laughed, leading her down a hallway lined with framed album covers. "Don't worry, everyone gets nervous their first time. Just focus on your music and let us handle the rest." They entered a spacious booth filled with state-of-the-art equipment. Microphones hung from the ceiling, and monitors displayed complex software interfaces. Lila's eyes widened as she took it all in. She'd seen studios like this in movies, but being here in person felt completely different. This was real. Over the next several days, Lila poured her heart into the recordings. With Alex's guidance, she experimented with different sounds and arrangements, tweaking each track until it felt right. At times, frustration bubbled up when things didn't go as planned, but Alex remained patient, encouraging her to trust her instincts. Slowly but surely, her confidence grew. One afternoon, as they wrapped up a particularly challenging session, Alex leaned back in his chair and grinned. "You've got something special, you know that?" Lila blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "Really? Absolutely. Your voice, it's raw and honest. People are going to connect with it." His words stayed with her long after she left the studio that evening. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she truly had what it takes to make it in the music industry. As the weeks went by, Lila found herself growing closer to Victoria and her family. They invited her to another gathering at their home, this time more casual. Ethan ran up to her as soon as she arrived, hugging her legs tightly. "Rex misses you," he declared, holding up his stuffed dinosaur. Lila laughed, ruffling his hair. "Well, tell Rex I miss him too." Watching Ethan play happily with his toys, Lila realized how much she admired Victoria. Despite her wealth and status, she carried herself with humility and grace. She treated everyone with kindness, whether they were employees, friends, or strangers turned guests. Like Lila, it inspired her to reflect on her own values and reminded her why she loved music in the first place, to create something meaningful and authentic. By the time her first single was ready for release, Lila felt a mix of pride and disbelief. The finished product sounded better than she'd ever imagined, capturing the essence of who she was as an artist. When the song hit streaming platforms, she held her breath, unsure of what to expect. To her astonishment, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Listeners praised its heartfelt lyrics and soulful melody, sharing it across social media and playlists. Within days, her follower count skyrocketed and messages of support flooded her inbox. Strangers reached out telling her how her music resonated with them, how it helped them through tough times. It was surreal and humbling. Lila had always dreamed of reaching people with her art, but she never imagined it would happen so quickly. And through it all, Victoria continued to cheer her on, celebrating each milestone as if it were her own. Yet, as the attention grew, so did the pressure. Industry professionals began reaching out, offering deals and collaborations. Some pushed her to adopt a more commercial sound, urging her to chase trends rather than stay true to herself. It was tempting, especially since success felt so close within reach. But deep down, Lila knew she couldn't compromise her authenticity. Not now, not ever. During one of their conversations, Victoria noticed the tension in Lila's voice. "What's worrying you?" she asked gently. Lila hesitated before admitting her fears. "I don't want to lose myself in all of this. Everyone has opinions about what I should do next, but I don't know if I can trust them." Victoria nodded thoughtfully. "I understand that feeling. When Charles and I first started our business, everyone had advice, most of it conflicting. In the end, the only thing that mattered was staying true to our vision. You'll figure it out, Lila. Trust yourself." Her words brought clarity. Lila realized that while the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, she had the strength to navigate. She owed it to herself, and to the little boy who reminded her of the power of kindness, to keep moving forward, and move forward she did. With Victoria's unwavering support and her own unshakable determination, Lila stepped boldly into the next chapter of her journey, ready to embrace whatever came her way. As Lila's music gained traction, her life transformed in ways she never imagined. What started as a single song blossomed into a full-fledged career, with fans eagerly awaiting her next release. Her social media profiles lit up with comments and messages from people who connected deeply with her lyrics. Some shared how her songs helped them heal after tough breakups. Others talked about finding strength during hard times because of her words. It was overwhelming, but also incredibly rewarding. But fame came with its own set of challenges. Suddenly, Lila wasn't just another face in the crowd. She was recognized everywhere she went. At first, it felt strange to have strangers approach her at the grocery store or coffee shop, asking for selfies or autographs. She didn't mind. It was flattering, but it took some getting used to. People weren't always kind either. A few online trolls criticized her voice, her style, even her background. They questioned whether she deserved her success, suggesting that her connection to Victoria and her family was the real reason behind her rise. Those comments stung, no matter how much she tried to brush them off. Late at night, when she couldn't sleep, Lila would scroll through negative remarks, letting self-doubt creep in. Was she talented enough? Had she earned this on her own merit, or was it all thanks to Victoria's generosity? The questions swirled in her mind, making her feel like an imposter in her own story. One evening, after a particularly rough day, Lila decided to visit Victoria. She needed someone to talk to, someone who wouldn't judge her for feeling lost amidst the chaos. When she arrived at the mansion, Victoria greeted her warmly, immediately sensing that something was weighing heavily on her heart. "Come sit," Victoria said, leading her to the cozy living room where they'd shared countless conversations before. "What's going on?" Lila sighed, sinking into the plush couch. "I don't know if I can do this anymore." Victoria raised an eyebrow, concern etched across her face. "Do what?" "This. Everything." Lila gestured vaguely, her frustration bubbling over. "The attention, the pressure, the criticism, it's too much. Sometimes I wonder if I even deserve any of it." Victoria listened quietly, giving Lila space to vent. When she finished, Victoria leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Let me ask you something. Do you still love making music? Of course I do, Lila replied without hesitation. That hasn't changed. Then focus on that, Victoria said firmly. The rest, the fame, the critics, the expectations, it's noise. Don't let it distract you from why you started this journey in the first place. Her words struck a chord. Lila realized she'd been so caught up in proving herself to others that she'd forgotten the joy music brought her. It wasn't about pleasing everyone. It was about staying true to her art and sharing it with those who appreciated it. Over the next few weeks, Lila made a conscious effort to tune out the negativity. She stopped reading hurtful comments online and focused instead on creating new music. She began writing songs inspired by her experiences, about overcoming doubt, embracing vulnerability, and finding strength in unexpected places. Each lyric poured straight from her soul, raw and honest. During one studio session, Alex noticed the shift in her energy. "This is different," he said, nodding approvingly as he adjusted the soundboard. "It feels deeper." "It is," Lila admitted, with a small smile. "I'm finally figuring out who I am as an artist and who I want to be." Her growth didn't go unnoticed. Fans loved the authenticity in her newer tracks, praising her for being brave enough to share her struggles. Critics who had once dismissed her now hailed her as a rising star with a unique voice. Doors that had seemed impossible to open began swinging wide, from invitations to perform at major festivals to collaborations with other artists she admired. Through it all, Victoria remained a constant source of support. She celebrated Lila's victories and offered guidance when things got tough. Their bond deepened beyond mentorship. They became true friends. Lila often found herself spending weekends at the Langston estate, playing board games with Ethan or chatting late into the night with Victoria. These moments grounded her, reminding her of the importance of staying connected to the people who mattered most. Ethan, now slightly older and more curious than ever, adored having Lila around. He proudly showed her his latest dinosaur collection, explaining each species with infectious enthusiasm. One afternoon, as they sat together on the floor surrounded by toys, Ethan looked up at her seriously. "Are you famous now?" he asked. Lila laughed, ruffling his hair. "I guess you could say that." "Does that mean you're rich too?" he pressed, his eyes wide with curiosity. She chuckled again, shaking her head. "Not exactly, but I'm doing okay. And besides, being rich isn't what makes someone special." Ethan tilted his head, thinking about her answer. "So what does?" "Kindness," Lila said simply. "Being kind to others. That's what really matters." He nodded, slowly, as if committing her words to memory. In that moment, Lila felt a surge of gratitude, not just for Victoria and Ethan, but for the entire journey that had led her here. Helping a lost boy at a festival had sparked a chain reaction she never could have predicted. It taught her the value of compassion, resilience, and believing in herself, even when the world tried to convince her otherwise. As months passed, Lila continued to evolve both personally and professionally. She released her second album independently, determined to prove that her success wasn't solely tied to the Langstons' influence. Recording it was challenging, requiring long hours and countless revisions, but it was also liberating. For the first time, she had complete creative control, and the result was a collection of songs that truly represented her. The launch party for the album was held at the Langston estate, bringing everything full circle. Friends, family, and fans gathered under twinkling lights strung across the backyard. Music played softly in the background as guests mingled, laughing and sharing stories. Lila stood near the buffet table, watching the scene unfold with a mix of pride and disbelief. When it was time for speeches, Victoria took the microphone, her voice warm and steady. "Tonight is about celebrating not just an incredible album, but an incredible person," she began, smiling at Lila. "Someone who reminds us that kindness and talent can change lives, including our own." Applause erupted, and Lila felt tears prick her eyes. As fireworks exploded overhead, lighting up the night sky, she reflected on how far she'd come since that chaotic day at the festival. What started as a simple act of kindness had grown into friendships, opportunities, and personal growth beyond anything she could have imagined. And yet, despite all the changes, one thing remained constant: her belief in the power of human connection. Whether it was helping a scared child find his way home or trusting strangers to guide her toward her dreams, every interaction shaped her in profound ways. Lila knew her journey wasn't over. It was only beginning. But whatever lay ahead, she faced it with courage, gratitude, and an unshakable faith in the goodness of people.